Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open to the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing you live every Thursday night, Facebook and YouTube land. The chats are always fun. We try to get to as many as we can. But remember, your chats may even show up in the show. And if you can't catch us live, catch us on the replay or in your favorite podcasting app. You know me, John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up, Joe Martinez. What's up, Worshipful?
Hi. Hello. Joe Martinez. Hello. Yes. What is my name? Joe Martinez. Yes. Past and current master of Manassas Lodge number 182 in Manassas, Virginia, for 5.5 more months. So not counting down or anything. But as always, damn glad to be here.
Forever.
Never again.
Okay. And last but not least tonight, joining us, Brother Jason Richards, Worshipful. How are you? Warsh.
How are you?
What's up, Warsh?
Well, it was a nice show we had.
Oh, there you
go. Jason Richards, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of Lafayette Lodge number 79 in Zanesville, Ohio.
Zanesville.
Very cool. Awesome. And 5 points deducted from Slytherin for Joe not wearing a red shirt tonight.
I didn't get the memo, so I went. It's
mine is pink.
It is pink.
It's more pink than salmon.
Screw you, John.
Alrighty. Next up,
light red.
Let's support our patrons who support the show. You guys are amazing. Thank you for supporting the show for many, many years and keeping free Masonic education online for many, many years to come. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable.
And let's also contribute to support John's, what are those colorblind glasses? We'll get him those. So
yes, the Enchroma glasses.
We can help John see color because he's not good at it.
I can see color just fine, thank you.
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah.
I can see both colors. Just fine. Just fine. All right.
Yes.
Next up, as usual, is Joe's favorite segment of the show every week.
Tarot card of the week.
Woo!
Let's do it again.
Please.
All right. Tonight we have the Transient Light Tarot, My Daily Driver by Ari Weisner.
And why is it your daily driver?
Yes.
It's just a deck that I immediately felt drawn to. It dispenses with some of the traditional kind of gender and court cards. And it's just, I have just always felt very connected to this deck.
Goes a long way. Good.
It's usually spot on. Tonight's episode, we have the Nine of Swords reversed.
Ooh.
Swords flying in the air. That's fun.
Well, which one is it?
So it is reversed.
Yes, it's reversed.
Yeah. So
everybody's stressing, didn't pay their taxes on time.
Yeah. I mean,
everybody filed extensions.
You have the anxiety that goes with some big event because it's a 9. It's not quite a 10. It's not finished yet, but it's like right. It's the 11th hour. It's a lot of stress. It's and then there's positive and negatives to everything. So the reverse is like, what's the negative side of that? Right now you have despair, hopelessness, that kind of thing. So
I was going to say more negative than anxiety.
It's more negative. You can have good anxiety. I mean, like, hey, you're getting pumped up, you're getting ready for a big presentation or something. That's kind of good anxiety, but like worrying about like, I don't know. I'm trying to be positive, guys.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the good anxiety list here, and nothing is popping up.
Well,
When I'm about to visit Joe, that's good anxiety.
I offered, brother Jose. I offered,
It's close.
and they said no. It's right there, and I bet you we would have had a Superman card. But they are not a sponsor, so they don't get any extra advertising. We have enough advertising going on this week.
Not a sponsor.
SoulStream, not a sponsor.
All right. So there you go. Try to have positive anxiety instead of negative anxiety.
Pay your bills.
Pay your
about
bills.
high anxiety.
Ooh.
Nice.
Spaceballs 2, 2027.
Hold on, Mel Brooks.
If Mel Brooks lives that long.
All right, let's do this thing. Tonight's episode is about the Pleiades, the cluster of stars, which talk about how it relates to astronomy, astrology, ancient myths, masonry, and all sorts of goodies tonight. So this should be a fun show. We'll try to cover it the best way we can. We've all taken some different aspects of it and we're going to pull this together into a nice weaving tale. So I think to begin, it would be nice to know what they are. What is the Pleiades? And I'm going to rely on Joe to correct my Greek because I know I'm going to screw it up now. I'm just going to get it out of the way.
Corrections incoming.
It's going to be only
Let's
as
go,
bad
man.
or worse than the introduction. All right.
Good, brother.
Okay, so let's hop right to this. Any good Freemason who tracks astronomy should have at least
A
access
natal
to-
chart.
Well, that too. Should have access to something like Stellarium, which is a great free and open source piece of software. It tracks the stars and the movement of the sky. Really good free and open source software. So let's talk about it.
So
Joe?
wait, before you do that, yeah, I was actually, I know you're not a fan, but iPhone users, I don't know if they have this for Android. There is a super fun one. It's called Sky Guide.
Heard about
And yeah, when you're walking with, as you're walking with your phone, if you're outside, it will follow the, where you are in position. So like see, it moves with the skyline. So I can go look at different, that's actually coming out really nice. Yeah, so that's fun to go stargazing with your phone and tells you the name. You could zoom in. It tells you all the information you want to know about constellations and stars and planets, and it even gives you their trajectories and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's free. So super fun.
Very cool. Very cool.
Anyway, not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor, but Android has many more apps that do exactly the same thing that Joe said.
Good for you.
All right, so how can we find this not quite constellation of Pleiades? All right, it's a cluster of stars. One thing to do is to start with the ecliptic, right? It is loosely tied to Taurus, so if you know where Taurus is, you're more than halfway there. But the one way to look for it is if you know the constellations along the path of the sun, called the ecliptic, that's that red line here. You try to find Taurus, and if you can find Taurus, you're pretty darn close where it's the top of Taurus. You see this little cluster up here, and that is the Pleiades cluster, all right? Now, looks like a big bunch of white dots, and that is because it is. But wait, I thought it was also known as the Seven Sisters. We'll get to that. We'll get to that tonight. Let's describe a little bit about its characteristics. So, Pleiades itself is a star cluster. It's not quite a constellation, but people have referred to it as kind of the little dipper. You can kind of make out a little bit of a basket and a little bit of a handle, but that's really not accurate. It is just a cluster of stars. And what's interesting is
all of the constellations are just clusters of stars.
Technically correct, which is the best kind of correct.
That's kind of correct.
Well, and it's hard to call it a constellation, right? To your point, John, because the things that make up the basket and stuff, you get more than 7, right? So yeah, there's more than 7 there. But continue. Sorry.
Yes, so it is a cluster of stars that were all born about the same time from the same cloud of gas. Also, a reference to Joe Martinez. And they're still traveling through space together. Now, when you look up with the naked eye, they are bright enough. So they have a magnitude of about, let me check my notes here, about +2 to +3 magnitude. So they are visible with the naked eye. You can probably see at least 6, maybe 7 stars with the naked eye. And if you get some binoculars or even just, amateur telescope, you could see a few more. But that's about the 6 or 7 that you can see right out of the box. It's
You said naked like 10 times in the past 90 seconds.
There's a lot of naked.
And the naked eye, you can see even more. Now, these
Naked
are,
eye, what?
let's see. Even though with the naked eye, you can only see about 6 or 7, there's actually roughly about 1,000 stars in this cluster alone. So that's amazing. Look at it. When you zoom in, it just starts just going all over the place. So there's much more to it.
The dumpy part is if you live anywhere in the northern hemisphere, you're not seeing them at all because they are right now in the southern hemisphere.
So that's an excellent point because it is tied to Taurus. How do you find it? And the best way to find it is if you know the constellation Orion, you look for Orion's belt. Now, Orion is a winter constellation, meaning that you can kind of see it in the early evening in wintertime. The only time you really see Orion peak up is really early in the morning or really, really late at night in the northern hemisphere during the summertime. So if you're here in the northern hemisphere, as most of our listeners are, you can catch the Pleiades if you catch them right before dawn, for example. That might be the best time to catch them currently here in the summertime. Now, how can we find them easily without needing Joe's super cool iPhone app? Best way, step 1, locate Orion. Look for Orion's belt. 3 stars make Orion's belt. And that will generally trace over to a star called Aldebaran. Aldebaran is a really bright star. It's actually the brightest star in Taurus, depending on which version of the diagram of Taurus you have. It's actually a Taurus's eye. Here, I'm going to show a picture here. Here's some old ancient chart of Taurus's eye, and there's Aldebaran shining right there. So it's Taurus's eyeball. And then keep going past Aldebaran, and then you'll see that group, that cluster of stars called the Pleiades.
I thought that was blown up by the Death Star.
They're peaceful people.
Yeah, they have no weapons.
So that's how you find the Pleiades. The other interesting things about them is they're only about 100 million years old, which is they're babies in comparison to our sun, for example, is about 4.6 billion years old. So they're little energetic toddlers full of hot gas, also like Joe. That is, in fact, they're so hot that if you use any sort of mild magnification, you'll actually see them show up as blue. They show up in a blue phase, or they're a B-type star, which is kind of interesting because that shows that they're really, really hot. They're much hotter than our sun, but much younger than our sun. Also, for our numerologists out there, the Pleiades are about 444 light years away from Earth. So they're some of the closest cluster, not the closest astronomical items in space that are closest to our galaxy, our solar system, but certainly of a star cluster, they're one of the closer ones of a star cluster. Joe?
No, you said galaxy, so you threw me off.
I corrected myself. Solar system. Solar system. Solar system.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the last thing that I had that I find fascinating about this group is because it is a cluster and they're all about the same age and from the same gas source, they're still loosely connected with gravity, right? So they're not really orbiting each other, but they're certainly kind of sticking together. And evolving together, which is really kind of a fascinating, just bunch of stuff stuck together. There are, let's see, there are a couple of the bright stars. I mean, we can walk through those probably as we go deeper along, but some of the stars do have names, but I'm not gonna. I'll let Joe destroy those in Greek.
I really want you to
No,
name
you
them.
don't. No, you don't.
I so do.
So there you go. That's how to find Pleiades. That's where they are, and how to find them. Easier to find in the winter months in the northern hemisphere.
Yep.
Cool. So since they've been around for such a long time and visible to the naked eye, obviously they've been found in cultures around the world for millennia. That this is something that you can find references not just in biblical references, but even ancient literature as well. So let's pivot to that. Let's learn a little bit about where some of our earliest forefathers have discovered these, talked about these, provided some mythos to these, etc. Who wants to go?
Well, I guess we could start with where they get their name from, the Pleiades.
Yeah.
Because that comes from Greek myth. Now we'll also talk about other myths that talk about this star group. Again, can't call it a constellation, but the Pleiades is a Greek name, and that's the name that they're traditionally known for in stargazing. But it's actually a really neat story. So the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, were born from the Titan Atlas. Everybody knows Atlas. He holds the world up. He's a Titan, not an Olympian, right? So they're the ones that came before. So Atlas, holds the world up on his shoulders, and he found on Tinder this awesome sea nymph named Pleione, where we get the
Titans
name
only.
Titans only. Yes, I love it. So Atlas and Pleione, she was a sea nymph, super beautiful. They got together and they had 7 babies, and these were the 7 sisters. So the 7 sisters were called Maya, Electra, Tayegete, Alcyone, Silanio, Merope, and Sterope or Asterope. And I think John is bringing them up. Yep, there you go. Okay, so on this map, they call it Asterope. Traditionally, the Greek myth was Sterope without the A. So, yeah, so 7 sisters.
That's exactly how I was going to pronounce them, too, by the way.
And you did a fantastic job. So, 7 sisters, all super beautiful. They spent their childhood, these 7 sisters spent their childhood hanging out with Artemis, who is the Greek goddess of the hunt. They ran around forests. They did fun things. And they basically lived out in the wild. But they were just freewheeling, super carefree. Everything was going great. But for those of you that have read any Greek mythology whatsoever, things turned pretty damn quickly into the negative. So, so as we know, Greek gods and goddesses and titans and other people of Greek myth, mortals, demigods, and gods, struggle with their emotions. So to tell you about these 7 sisters before we talk about the awful thing that happened to them, Maya was the eldest sister, right? And she lived in a cave in Arcadia. Zeus got to hang out with her. And did I disappear? Am I here? Hi.
They're good.
Zeus went to, rang her up on her iPhone and said hello. They had a baby, and that baby was Hermes, so the messenger god. So that's where Hermes came from. Yeah. Electra was super proud, second oldest.
Supermodel.
Supermodel. Yep, absolutely.
That was Carmen.
A Marvel comic character as well, with that Jennifer Garner movie. Not a sponsor. So she basically gave birth to mortals that ended up founding the royal house of Troy. So there was the beginnings of the city of Troy. So that was what spawned that. Then we've got Tayegete, who also, Zeus got around, man. caught Zeus's eye as well. But Tayegeti bore a son to Zeus, and his name was Lacedaemon, who was the founder of Sparta. So remember, we have the Titans. We've talked about Greek myth before, right? Titans came before the Olympians, but the Olympians were the ones whose offspring basically created the world and all the important things in Greece. So you're going to notice a trend here where like all the major city-states in Greece were founded by these early children of the Olympian gods. So we've got Sparta, we've got Troy. Yeah, he totally did. And sometimes without their blessing. But so then now we're going to switch it up a little bit. We've got Alcyone, who she was a lover of the sea. So instead of Zeus paying her a visit, we've got Poseidon, the god of the sea, who is also brother to Zeus. They had a bunch of children that ended up becoming the monsters of the deep and stuff like that. So no cool cities, sea monsters is what we got from Alcyone and Poseidon. Then we've got Celaeno. Don't know too much about her except that she also had babies with Poseidon. So, the big three Greek gods, we've got Zeus, we've got Poseidon, we've got Hades. Those two like to party and, definitely had all the apps. So Poseidon, Celaeno, they had babies as well. And a lot of the myths in the city of Thebes are attributed to the children of Poseidon and Celaeno. Then we're going to go with the name that John had on the map, Asterope, whose name means lightning. She, and you can bring it up again, awesome. She bore a son named Oenomaus. So Oenomaus was a king, and definitely had a lot of cool stories written about him. Now Ares, the god of war, tried to do a side thing with Asterope, but she refused his advances. Finally, the youngest, we've got Merope. She was the only of the seven sisters who did not swipe right when it came to a god. She actually married a mortal, and you may have heard the name of this mortal. His name was Sisyphus, who pissed off the gods as
the rock guy.
The rock guy, yeah. So he was doomed to roll a boulder up a hill for all eternity. So Merope, the youngest, is the dimmest of the seven sisters. And I think that's kind of why they named her that, because she was the only of the seven sisters to not consort with the gods and actually marry a mortal. So those are all the stars there. Yep, perfect. So seven sisters, they had their lives, they did their thing, they had babies, they started cities, everything was going well. All of a sudden, this mighty hunter named Orion took a fancy for the seven sisters, not one, not two, but all seven. Yes, so he started giving them unwanted advances, shall we say. And he started chasing them all over the earth. So the seven sisters run around like crazy trying to get away from Orion.
I bet Zeus was pissed.
Well, it's probably not, because Zeus and Poseidon, they did cavort around with many folk. So once they had babies and moved on, there was more stories to tell. So there were more lady folk to conquer.
And look, he's still stalking them today.
Yep, and that's where we're getting to. So yeah, Orion chasing the seven sisters all over the face of the earth. They cannot get away. So all seven of them actually cried out to Zeus and begged Zeus to save them from Orion, who was creepy and wouldn't leave them alone, right? So Zeus did say,
is a thing.
Yes. Well, this is Greek mythology, so no, it wasn't. So Zeus took pity on them and said, okay, I'm going to help you out. So grabbed all seven sisters and immediately turned them from godlike or mortal-like creatures and turned them into stars and threw them out to the night sky where they could hang out forever. At this point, they were safe from Orion, and the places in the sky were immortalized forever. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end that way, and that dovetails nicely into John's talk about how we actually find the Pleiades, because they're still being chased by Orion. So when Orion set himself amongst the stars, you can see he is pursuing the Pleiades and again chasing these seven sisters for all time. So, but that star group and the constellation of Orion actually will never, the way the stars are actually moving in the night sky, they will actually never meet. They're actually moving further apart. So, knock on wood,
Good for
Orion
them.
will not catch the Seven Sisters. So,
So,
yep.
In
That's how they got.
addition, the name Pleiades probably refers to like plane in Greek, which is to sail, because it was an astrological marker as well for sailors, right? Because it would come over the horizon at a certain point during like the spring or the equinoxes. So that's another little fun fact.
Hmm.
And so it was used for navigation. And also, it did mention Aldebaran, not Alderon, but Aldebaran, the eye of Taurus, which in Arabic means the follower, and that's implied that star Aldebaran is following the Pleiades. So fun fact
Yes.
there.
Yeah. So just to put a bow on that fun fact. So the name of their mother, Pleione, where we get the beginning of the name of Pleiades, actually comes from the Greek word pleion, which means to increase or to grow in number. And if you actually zoom in on that cluster, like John did before, you'll see that star cluster has way more stars than the 7 popular sisters.
Over
They're
1,000.
all in there. Yeah.
Over 1,000 hot balls of gas.
All being chased by a creepy dude.
Oh,
That you can see if your eyes are naked.
yes.
Lots going on there.
Mhm.
Is there a clothed eye? I don't know, Andre. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the story.
That's the Greek story,
It is the Greek story. Yeah.
because it's also found in other cultures as well. Jason, what have you researched for tonight's show?
So I was interested to see where, since Freemasonry is very connected with the Old Testament, to see where the Pleiades are represented or where they come up in the Old Testament. Have found three references to the Pleiades, 2 in Job and 1 in Amos. And so in let's see, in Job 38, 31 to 33, it says, "Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or loose the cords of Orion?"
Nice.
And then Job 9:9, "Who made the bear and Orion, the Pleiades and the chambers of the south?" Then Amos, "He who made the Pleiades and Orion, and turns deep darkness into morning, and darkens the day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name." And so in these references, they're often talked about as far as being made by God, as an expression of kind of the immense power of the creator God.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask because it's, if you look at English translations or probably other native language translations of the Old Testament, they're always referring to the Greek names. So those Greek names came later. If you look at Hebrew versions of the Bible, they have their Hebrew names, right, which are not Orion, which are not.
I don't read biblical Hebrew.
And that's okay.
Yes.
Nobody's asking you to. Yeah. But they were called other things. The Pleiades was, I think the word was just cluster. The word was chema. So that just means cluster. So it didn't have a name. So when they translated everything into the Septuagint, that's where we start to get that Greek influence, where they started naming things. And then that's what ended up later becoming, Latin and then English versions of the Old Testament. So that's where those names came in. So, but yeah, to Jason's point, they are named in Job. But again, the writers at that time were not hanging out with Greeks. So that came way later.
Right. Now, you also get, scattered references to the Pleiades in Freemasonry, not necessarily in Masonic ritual, but there are a number of Masonic artifacts housed in various Scottish Rite temples that that have the 7 stars representing the Pleiades on them. And so 7 being one of those numbers revered by Freemasons. As far as the 7 liberal arts and sciences are concerned. So yeah, I wasn't able to find any overt references to the Pleiades in Masonry.
We got one that I saw.
Okay.
Jason's favorite, Morals and Dogma.
I'm not a Scottish Rite Mason, so yes, I missed it.
No, and that's fine. Yeah, no, it's only written about once that I was able to find, and that was by Pike. But he kind of
so it must be true.
So it must be true. But he actually talks about the Pleiades.
Another number 2040 when the Pleiades no longer be of concern.
No, nobody will care. But yeah, Albert Pike mentions the Pleiades in one of the pages of Morals and Dogma.
Yeah. More than one. Wow. I'm bringing up my copy here and searching through that. Another thing that Suncard mentioned, it is on the trestle board, so that's interesting. Okay, so I believe, for the reasons that Jason assigned, that because it just happens to be a 7-number star cluster, when trestle boards became popular, I think we did a couple episodes about the trestle boards and tracing boards and all that, and how there was a lot of copying going on. There was a lot of like just cheat sheet. Oh, I'll see yours and I'll just draw mostly the same thing. And if not, I'll steal almost exactly pieces of yours, and then I'll just fill in the rest with my own artistic interpretation. But you'll see in early tracing trestle boards, the 7 stars up there with the moon. If there's the sun and the moon, they'll just put those 7 stars. Why those 7? And they'll try to loosely fit them into the sort of the shape of the Pleiades. And for another interesting reason, they would put it at the top of Jacob's ladder, right? So here's Joe to the rescue, right? There's one example of seven stars just kind of hanging out by the moon there, because it's possible that the moon would pass through that constellation, but rarely. That star cluster, not constellation. It's not a constellation.
Good catch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's more symbolic from that aspect, other than, if you want to start layering on your Greek mythology on top of your Freemasonry, but it's entirely up to you and Joe.
Isn't Freemasonry all symbolic, though?
Yes. I'm trying to find one you were talking about, John, where it's at the top of the ladder. All of the ones I see are near the moon, which, again...
Well, that's fair.
You wouldn't see that often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Another little fun fact about the Pleiades, as I vamp while I'm trying to search through Morals and Dogma. There is, it's not called the Pleiades in other cultures, right? This thing has been around for millennia, since human beings have observed the sky. I know it's been a whole bunch of other names. One interesting fun fact is, in Japan, it's known as Subaru. And if you've ever heard of a car company called Subaru, and you look at their logo is the 7 sisters, the 7 stars, which is actually kind of cool. So you probably pass by the 7 sisters every day and don't realize it on your way to work.
Or the 7 sisters pass by you every day.
That's true. It depends if you're driving a Geo Metro or not.
They're in the HOV lane, for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go. Thank you, Joe, for finding that.
Boom.
Not quite in the trestle board format, but I'll allow it.
That's only 6, though.
Well, and that's an interesting point. So, and I don't remember if you touched on this, John. So, depending on the culture, some cultures view that star cluster as having 6 primary stars. And again, going back to the diagram that John showed you of the night sky, there's thousands of stars in that cluster, but the 6 brightest are the most prominent. And then there's one that's kind of dim. It's Merope. Sometimes you can't see that one too good with the naked eye. So
Naked eye.
some cultures focused on 6 stars in that cluster. Yeah. But yeah, good catch.
Is Pluto a planet?
Pluto is a planet. I'm definitely in the Pluto camp.
Indeed. Smaller than our moon, but still a planet.
It revolves around the sun.
There you go.
Boom.
All right, let's see. I found my Morals and Dogma reference. Here's one of many. Where are we? I'm in the Kindle version, so I don't know what chapter I'm in. I just did a search. I'm curious. Where
You had it.
Yeah, I did have it. But this
Go
is
back.
where, yeah, Pike is going on and on about a whole bunch of different constellations. There we go, the Pleiades. There we go. The Pleiades were so named from a Greek word signifying to sail. In all ages, they have been observed for signs and seasons. Virgil says that the sailors gave names to the Pleiades, etc., etc. The Pleiades were sometimes called the Virgiliae, or the Virgins of Spring, because the sun entered this cluster of stars in the season of blossoms. Their Syrian name was Sukkoth, or Sukkoth Benoth, derived from a Chaldean word signifying to speculate or observe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Masons will hear that word, sucketh.
Sukkoth. Joe
Mhm.
Sukkoths.
And Zeriditha.
Yeah, so go check your local copy of Morals and Dogma for more details there.
Definitely the annotated version. Otherwise, your
Yes.
brain will melt hard.
And you can see I definitely get the Kindle version isn't bad. It really isn't, because everything's annotated, hyperlinked, and searchable. Control F is your friend.
Is there an audible version?
Surprisingly, there is an audible version.
There is? Who reads it?
I don't remember. I'm curious now.
Oh,
It's Maynard.
Welcome to the Tyler's Place podcast.
Chapter 1, page 1009.
Oh, it is narrated by a brother, though.
Who?
Narrated by Adam Hainan, 32nd degree.
Ah,
Yeah. Well, good for you. Just keeping it in the family. Awesome.
There we go.
just like the Pleiades.
Not like Zeus.
Not like this. No. Well, somebody asked the question. I think somebody asked the question. I think some card asked the question. What significance can we derive from this stuff? And I guess it depends on the culture you're talking to. Like John had mentioned a couple of times, some cultures definitely use the Pleiades as navigational waypoints, right? So, most cultures that navigated by sea, will have absolutely used those stars to orient themselves and their place in the world, because they were always visible lights in the night sky. So take the significance from that, symbolically, what you wish. Some card. Boom.
And of course, use them as an astrological metaphor for maybe 7 liberal arts and sciences that you may learn about in Masonry. Certainly worth pursuing those, and so it's a good symbol of those. And that's what I do like about a lot of this synchronism that comes with Freemasonry, is that it pulls all these things together, and you can kind of look at it through different lenses, right? That you can tie these things as symbols to hang frameworks off of. Yeah, Joe?
I mean, yeah, one big thing, definitely not Masonic, that we can learn from the Pleiades is no means no. So, like no literally means no. We had 7 awesome ladies who were so afraid of being captured by Mr. Creepy Dude Orion that they turned into stars and are stuck in the night sky for all eternity. So no means no, guys and gals.
Subdue those passions.
Subdue
right?
them a lot. Yes.
Indeed.
Yep. That's my takeaway.
Awesome. Brother Andre says, sailing was mentioned. I'm a Mason and I sail boats. Plus, like we said, 7 liberal arts and sciences.
Boom.
I mean, I'm glad he sails boats because it'd be awkward if he like sailed trucks or something like that.
If it floats, it goats. Awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other references I had here for different cultures here. RJ had pulled some notes together as well. There's Apkallu and or Abgal, which are found in cuneiform inscriptions that in general mean wise or sage. And so they are these 7 demigods called the Apkallu, sometimes described as part man and part fish or bird, associated with human wisdom. These creatures are often referred in scholarly literature as the 7 sages. Sometimes the sages are associated with a specific primeval king, and after the Great Flood, looking at you, Jason, the epic after, like specifically Epic Gilgamesh and beyond, further sages and kings are listed. Post-deluge, the sages are considered human, and in some texts are distinguished by being referred to as Umanu, not Apkallu. Another use of the term Apkallu is when referring to figurines used in apotropic rituals. These figurines include fish-man hybrids, representing the 7 sages, but also include bird-headed and other figures. In a later work by Berosus, describing Babylonia, the Apkallu appear again, also described as fishmen who are sent by the gods to impart knowledge to humans.
Well, that was the big one, right? Like the Greeks, had them as 7 sisters, but anything that stems from Sumerian and that part of the world, they were always 7 sages. But they brought, I'm thinking all the way back to like Anderson's Constitutions, like they brought science and culture and wisdom and all the things to humanity. So these fish people gave us fire and architecture and poetry and all this awesome stuff. So
nice.
Yeah.
If you take the sages approach, then you could, because we don't use the term Pleiades in the Hebrew Bible, they could refer to the creation tale of the Nephilim in Genesis 6, 1-4 as well. May also have an echo in the text of the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 9:1, where wisdom built her house and she set out its 7 pillars.
Zing.
The story of Enoch, the 7th from Adam, and his ascension to heaven has also been proposed to be a variant or influenced by the 7th Apkallu, who is also said to have ascended to heaven in the Metziri. There you go.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, cool. That's all I've got for tonight. Final thoughts, final questions. Why should people care about the Pleiades and Freemasonry?
Because we said so.
There you go.
Boom.
Done. Jason, anything else? Anything else you want to add?
Hot balls of gas.
Yes, and besides Joe, what else? Nice. Joe, final thoughts?
Yeah. Thank you for all the references going back to me today. I thought it was great. Lots of love there. No, this was fun. I love stories about the stars and what they can teach us. So like I said, a little bit of creepiness here, which I don't think was the intent, but like you said, all cultures have some story about this cluster of stars, which man has been looking at for thousands and thousands of years. So yeah, super fun.
Awesome. Wait, that's interesting. Back to me. All right, so yeah, final thoughts. I know that there are some Quattuor references to research into the Seven Sisters. I just couldn't find those in time for the show, so there might be some areas of research there. But I think in general, because it's not explicitly called out in Masonic ritual, it's more of an allusion, right, to Greek mythology and the inspiration there and how it ties into Freemasonry, as well as with the number 7 that we revere as Freemasons. And so hopefully you blend those together, you learn to apply some of those lessons of what to do and what not to do, and hopefully make yourself a better man because of it. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for watching and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.
Wow.